Hello, everyone. Welcome to the west coast of beautiful British Columbia, Canada, on the traditional territories of the Hawaiian First Nations. I'm Em, and I'm an educator here at the Marine Sciences Center. So, Banfield Marine Sciences Center, or BMSC for short, is a not-for-profit registered Canadian charity and a shared campus of the universities of British Columbia, Victoria, Alberta, Calgary, and Simon Fraser University. We've been hosting researchers for almost 50 years from all over the world, as well as offering 4-credit university courses and running immersive public education field trips for school groups. So if you like what we're doing and you want to see more, please consider making a donation. We've got information on how to do so in the video notes, as well as a link to our website where you can check out all the other cool stuff that we're up to. Today, we're talking about plankton, and so I want everyone to type in the comments and let me know what you think it means to be a plankton. So throughout the course of this webinar, I'll be asking lots of questions, and I want everyone, young and old and experienced and maybe less knowledgeable about plankton, to try to answer and really engage with this material. As well, throughout the live stream, please feel free to type in any questions and we'll get to as many as we can. So we've got a whole team here today. Phil is going to be behind the scenes and he'll be dealing with all the technology stuff. And so Phil is going to show you a video through Google Maps so you can see where Banfield is located. You can take it away, Phil.
Thanks, Em. Hi, everyone. So let's pull up our show here. Welcome to our show. And if you haven't been to Banfield before, so we're on the very west coast of North America over here. So we have Canada up there, the US, and Vancouver Island is right in that little spot right there. So let's check out where Banfield is. So there's Vancouver Island. As we get closer, we are noticing that we are here. This is called Barclay Sound. It's a large bay filled with islands and channels. And Banfield itself is right here on the southeast corner of Barclay Sound. And the Science Center is right on the point of land. The road ends at the Banfield Marine Science Center. So here's the main building. We are located in the whale lab, right just to the right of the main building right there. There we have it, our place in the world. Back to you, Em.
Thanks, Phil. Here we've got Kelly. Kelly is really the true star of the show today. She's going to be sitting at the microscope with the official plankton receptacle and the plankton squirter. And she's going to be putting up lots of lovely individuals on these fancy microscopes, and they'll be broadcast straight to your home. Thanks, Kelly. So we have a lot of plankton lined up for you. And Plankton is not just a character from the hit comedy series SpongeBob SquarePants. So Phil's got a cartoon image to show you a little bit more. For those of you at home who maybe haven't watched SpongeBob SquarePants, this is Plankton, the character. Now, Plankton is actually a real plankton. This is the character, and all you have to do to turn this cartoon into a real plankton is get rid of that little eyebrow, get rid of the mouth. We're going to rub out the little arms. And that organism right there is what we call a copepod. So Kelly's got a copepod for you on the microscope. And we're going to take a look, and you can see this looks exactly like this little cartoon. You've got the 2 huge antennae, and then you've also got that big eyeball right in the middle. So I think Samantha Macbeth had the completely right answer when I asked, what is plankton? And she said, drifters. So plankton comes from the Greek word planktos, which means to drift. And so a plankton is anything in the ocean that is unable to swim against the current. A lot of folks said that they had to be microscopic, and a lot of them are, but some plankton, like jellyfish, for example, can actually be quite large. They're just unable to swim against the current. So back to SpongeBob for a moment. I'm sure maybe when your parents let you all watch SpongeBob as a kid, no one thought it would end up being educational, but there's a lot of things to be learned from SpongeBob. So your next task, in the comments, I want you to tell me all of the characters from SpongeBob. See if you can list all of them, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Thanks, folks, for playing along. So, plankton are a big group of drifters, and within that group, we've got kind of two main categories. The first category are our phytoplankton. So phytoplankton, we've got a nice, beautiful slide of those, but phytoplankton are these incredible organisms that use light and carbon dioxide to make sugar and oxygen. And so they are like plants, green, and they're photosynthesizing. So we've got a bunch of chain diatoms on the screen. You can see how beautiful all of those are. The next big group of plankton are the zooplankton. So those are our animal-like plankton. So those are things that look more like little tiny itty-bitty zoomy things. So we'll flip over to our screen full of all the different types of zooplankton you might see. So we've got a bunch of little crabs, maybe some barnacles, all sorts of little animals. And just like you or me, these animals need to eat other things in order to survive. So you might be thinking, why are we talking about plankton? Because I'm not sure if you noticed, but when I was pointing out Kelly, there's this nice big whale skeleton behind her. Maybe you're asking, why aren't we talking about whales? Whales are so much cooler than plankton. To which I respond, how dare you? Plankton are incredible, and hopefully over the course of this webinar, you will learn to appreciate and understand them a bit better. We are going to be explaining and teaching you why it's really the little things that matter. And to get us started, let's see what all your answers were. We've got SpongeBob, Squidward, Laurel had a bunch of ideas. Looks like we had someone say the whale. The whale is not necessarily a plankton, but we've got Mr. Crab, Squidward, Larry the Lobster, Patrick Star, Miss Puff, Sandy Cheeks, and Plankton. I think that might have been Zoe and Sam. Great job, folks. So what do all these characters have in common? Besides Sandy the squirrel and the whale, they all start their life as plankton. So all of these organisms and lots of other marine organisms start their life as little tiny babies, as larvae that are floating around in the ocean. Their parents spray them out into the water, and they drift around on the currents going wherever the ocean takes them. Just like this cute little baby armored spaceship. Let's take a look. This here is actually a larval crab. Super adorable. And these little armored spaceships will grow up to be big, scary, terrifying crabs that are the terror of children everywhere. Why is it helpful to have babies that are just getting swept all over the place? You might think that it's a big, dangerous world, and you're absolutely right. And so one of the reasons that plankton is such a great way to start your life is because you can disperse, you can spread all over the place. Yeah, Megan Riley, you nailed it, dispersal. So in BC, we've got a bunch of species of native crab, and let's take a look at all of these little crabs we've got zooming around. So we've got tons and tons of native species of crab, but we've also got this one invasive species, a species of crab that isn't from here. That is our European green crab. Here's a photo I took about a year ago when I was a student here at Banfield Marine Sciences Center. This is a European green crab, and so you can see how small it is. This photo is taken in a milk crate, so the squares are only a couple centimeters apart. You might be thinking, how is a crab from Europe going to come all the way to British Columbia? That's a long ways for a little tiny crab to crawl along the bottom. And the answer is it didn't crawl here. It actually came here as larvae. Yeah, Davis Bain, you got it right. It drifted here. So it actually hitched a ride as larvae on a little boat or a bunch of little boats. And that's how they were able to make their way kind of worldwide. And today, the European green crab is one of the most notorious, least wanted characters in our ocean. So Megan Riley said ballast water, and that's totally correct. Ballast water is what the ships use to help weight themselves down. So they'll suck in a bunch of water, and then they drive all the way across the ocean. And when they get to the destination, they just dump all that water back out, and any plankton, any larva that was in that ballast water is now transported somewhere else. So these crabs really are quite ecologically devastating. They're quite harmful, but they're coming over here as larvae. So with lots of things like stand-up comedy and also the west coast of North America and how everything works, timing really is everything. And phytoplankton are the timekeepers. So let's take a look at some of that phytoplankton we've caught in our plankton tow earlier. After a long, cold, dark winter, in the springtime as the waters warm up and the light comes back, these phytoplankton boom. What do you think phytoplankton's role is in their ecosystem? Why are they so important? Why do we care about phytoplankton? Let's take a look at some more of these chain diatoms while you think about why they're just so important. Megan Riley says they make oxygen. That is absolutely correct. And we've got someone else saying that they are the first level of ocean food chains. Evan says they feed all the other plankton. These answers are all completely correct. As primary producers, phytoplankton form the base of the food chain, and so when they bloom, when there's a giant boom in their population, they feed everything else, and that giant boom transfers all the way up the food chain. So there's one specific group of animals that really, really love phytoplankton, really require the phytoplankton bloom to happen right on time, and that's our herring. Let's take a look at what those herring look like. So our herring are fish that live offshore out in the ocean, and then every spring the herring come inshore, and they spawn. This herring spawn is so impressive that you can actually see the clouds of sperm all the way from outer space. It's pretty incredible. It's very impressive. So these herring don't just gorge themselves on the plankton, but everything else in the ocean gorges itself on the herring. So gray whales migrate up to time their arrival with the herring spawns. They can eat all those tasty fish, but they're also super important for the coastal First Nations group. So the phytoplankton feed the herring, and the herring feeds the people. So here's a photo of those eggs. They lay the eggs all over eelgrass and all over kelp, and their eggs are quite a delicacy. They're very tasty. Yum. If you found this live stream from our social media, maybe you were lured here by that cute photo of an octopus that one of our staff mates took a photo of. So unfortunately, we don't have any octopus here. That was a bit of a teaser for you, but we do have a photo of a different mollusk, a different larval mollusk, and it's just as cute in my opinion. Here we've got a bunch of baby clams. These are clam babies. Clams and octopus are all mollusks, and mollusks have super soft, squishy shells, and they're also yummy. Absolutely true. So these little tiny clams are going to continue to develop shells, and they will eventually settle to the bottom of the ocean and live out their life. These shells are made of calcium carbonate, which is the same structure that makes up a lot of the hard parts in marine organisms. So it makes up corals and all types of mollusk shells. So what do you think might happen if I dropped these cute little baby clams into a beaker full of acid? Let me know, and I'm going to explain more about why that isn't such a far-fetched idea. So let's talk about climate change. Right now, what's happening is that we've got lots and lots of people, and they're burning fossil fuels, driving cars and such. And when fossil fuels are burned, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And that carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases, and that's one of the big drivers behind climate change. But CO2, or carbon dioxide, isn't just wreaking havoc on our climate, it's also dissolving into our oceans. And when carbon dioxide dissolves into the ocean, it forms a kind of acid. And so all these little babies that are floating around in the ocean actually are experiencing more acidic conditions than they're used to. So I had a lot of people chime in and say they would die, and that's probably correct. It's a really great response, really good hypothesis you have. And so we're not going to be putting our little babies in acid today because that's pretty cruel, but we have a demo for you that shows what would happen. So calcium carbonate is also the thing that makes up these antacid tablets, kind of like a TUM. So if you took a calcium carbonate tablet like this, and we dropped it in a vinegar solution, that would simulate what would happen if you put a bunch of baby mollusks, a bunch of baby clams, into an acidified ocean. Let's see what happens here. Bloop. You can see all those bubbles forming. That's what happens as that tablet dissolves. So the shells that little baby oysters and mussels have are dissolving in acidified water. We'll try and check back on that calcium carbonate tablet later, and we'll see how much of it's dissolved. Chaz Francis says, my God, yes, it is horrifying. This is actually already a problem for baby mollusks all over the place. Oyster farmers in Washington are already having trouble because they're breeding their oysters and the water is already too acidic for those little babies to survive. Their shells are dissolving and these tiny little itty bitty babies are being killed by our actions. It's quite heartbreaking. So let's take a look at something different, something adult, something grown up. So here we have a bunch of different barnacles. Yeah, lots of barnacles. So we've got some acorn barnacles. We've got some little tiny brown barnacles, lots of different species. Unfortunately, we don't have any oh, maybe there's a limpet on the bottom. Nope, no limpets, sorry. These are all pretty easy to identify. However, if we take a look at some little tiny barnacles, you'll understand why it's much harder to identify the larva. So here we've got a whole bunch of little barnacles zooming around, and I couldn't tell you which species these are from because there's just so many of them and they're so little. How would you identify something like this larva when they're so small and quite tricky, and lots of barnacles look more or less similar when they're larvae like this? How would you figure out which species they belong to? Let me know in the comments while we watch these barnacles zooming around. Megan Riley says DNA. Someone else is suggesting that we wait until they mature. Megan Riley, you are so on it today. So barnacles, yes, we could wait for them to grow up, absolutely correct. But if we wanted to figure out what they are as little babies, we could use DNA barcoding. DNA is the backbone of life, and we inherit our DNA from our parents. That means that you have more similar DNA with people or organisms that you're more closely related to. And that means that scientists can take a little bit of a tissue sample, maybe a hair or a bit of blood or a feather, and they can use that little bit of tissue and sequence the DNA and then compare the DNA sequence of the unknown organism to the DNA sequences of known species, and that way they can figure out which species are which. Here at Fanfield Marine Science Center, we actually participate in a lot of citizen science. So here's the DNA barcoding technique. We have our students become citizen scientists because we get them to isolate a single plankter. Plankter is the single form of plankton. So they'll isolate a single plankton. The little tiny barnacles we got isolated, and their best brain power, and they identify the barnacle as close as they can, and they send it off to the University of Guelph, who sequences it and adds it to the DNA barcode of life. So this one individual barnacle would be isolated and put in a single little well plate in ethanol, and then we mail them off to the University of Guelph. And that's just one of the many ways that our students participate in citizen science. Citizen science is basically any person, any general person, any citizen who wants to get involved in science and help contribute to furthering knowledge. And if you're interested in becoming a citizen scientist and you like identifying things, you should really check out the app iNaturalist. This is not a paid promotion at all, but I kind of think about it like adult Pokemon Go, because you collect photos of organisms that you've seen and you upload them, and then the community can help you identify them. And you can even contribute to research papers where they need information on where certain species are found. It's really fun. I kind of got a little bit obsessed with it. So hopefully I've gotten you excited about identifying stuff, and now we have a challenge for you. So Kelly, it's time for the super secret slides. Let's show them, see if they can figure it out. What is this thing? It's a few things, but we're talking about that blue strand right there. What do you think it is? Is it a worm? Is it a plant? Is it a bird? What are we thinking here? The color might give it away a little bit. We've got Chaz Francis saying it's plastic. Absolutely, Chaz, you nailed it. This is what we call a microplastic. Microplastics come in many forms. They can be chunks, they can be beads or fragments, but most frequently they're actually fibers like that blue string that we just saw. And those fibers are coming from a source that we use every single day. It's our clothes. Lots of clothing these days is made of synthetic materials, so plastics, unnatural fibers. And every time you wash your clothes, every time you wash a fleece sweater, little tiny strings from that sweater will come off and they go down the drain. And like we learned in Finding Nemo, all drains lead to the ocean. Even if you live in the prairies, your drains likely go into a stream, and that stream probably feeds into the Arctic Ocean. And so that's how all of these little plastic strings are finding their way into the ocean. And you might be thinking, uh-oh, that's not very good. And you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. They're definitely going right into the ocean. It's very bad. And one of the reasons that it's very bad is that these tiny little plankton, all these little larvae, they're eating these microplastics. They're getting confused and they're eating them, and they think that they're food. And so that little tiny zooplankton, that little animal, will eat a microplastic, and then it'll get eaten by something bigger. And then it gets eaten by something even bigger than that. And that will continue up the food chain until we get to something maybe like tasty salmon or a tuna. And that's how these microplastics, one of the ways they're making their way into us. So if I'm going out and I'm catching and I'm eating a salmon, there's a really good chance that salmon's got a bunch of microplastic in it as well. And so that can be a very scary thing to think about, all the microplastics that are making their way from our clothes into the ocean and then back into us. So Megan Riley wants to know, what can we do? One of the things that you can do is to try to buy fewer synthetic clothes. You can wash your clothes a bit less. I know I definitely do not wash my fleece sweaters as much as I should, but you can let them get a bit stinky before you put them in the washing machine. Washing machines actually used to come with filters until consumers complained that they got clogged too often. But you can buy filters for your washing machine. You can also wash your clothes in special bags that will trap all those fibers. These are all kind of consumer heavy options, which is unfortunate. And so as always, if you want to make a big change, you can always rally and petition your governments and say, enough is enough. We need you to deal with this. No more passing the buck to us little guys. It's a great question. It's always important to think about what we can do. That's kind of the end of our prepared slides, but now I think it's time to take a look at our additional mystery slide and see what's zooming around. We did a nice big plankton tow this morning, and so I'm pretty excited to see what we caught. Let's look at the mystery slide. Kelly labeled it extra credit. This is incredible. Let's just take a moment and appreciate and observe all the things zooming around. Maybe you can chime in and let me know what you're seeing. This would be a great time if you have questions to ask those questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we are able to. David Spain says, it looks like an apricot. It totally looks like an apricot. We actually thought that little guy was an octopus when we first saw it in the toe. It's kind of sad to find that it wasn't an octopus. Mark Lim says, spot prawn. I know Mark really likes eating spot prawns. Maybe that was optimistic. Dakota wants to know if they're eating the orange one. I don't think they're eating the orange one. They're just swarming it a little bit. Chaz says, is it a porcelain crab? So many good guesses. So this orange crab, we don't know what species it is. We're not really sure yet, but when you count the legs, you can see that it only has 6 walking legs. It's got 2 claws and only 6 walking legs, which means that it's not a true crab. It's actually most likely a lithoid crab, which is the same family as king crab and hermit crab. So we're not sure what the species is, but it's some kind of lithoid crab. This would be a really great test for our DNA identification skills, because if we could isolate that crab and send it off to Guelph, maybe they could tell us. Let's see if we can find a porcelain crab, because someone mentioned them earlier. Kelly says there is one in there. How exciting. Porcelain crabs are a lot of people's favorite larvae because they have these ridiculous head spines. They look really silly. It's like all the rest of the crabs swimming around, except it's got a spine that projects super, super, super far in front of it and super high far behind it. Chaz wants to know if it's an octopus. I'm so sorry, Chaz. I don't think we have any octopus today. We kind of lured you all here under false pretenses of that photo. Octopus are pretty rare find. So it looks like we're having some trouble finding the porcelain crab, which is super understandable. There's a bajillion little things scooting around in here. They're so fast. Plankton can be really difficult to look for when they're moving like this. So someone's asking, what magnification is this? Mark Lim wants to know. Kelly, what's our magnification right now? We are at 80 times magnification. But we can go even farther. Whoa. And what magnification is this now? This is 350 times magnification. This is a really nice microscope, absolutely. It's nice to be able to zoom all the way in. You can see all the little spines on this crab. It's quite fuzzy. Yeah, baby crabs are absolutely really cute. Bill, are there any questions off YouTube? No questions from YouTube. Everyone's on Zoom today. Ooh, let's take a look at this thing. This is quite a large plankter. Really enjoy saying plankter. I hope you do as well. So someone thinks it might be a lobster. It certainly looks like a lobster. Do we have any more guesses on here? Maybe one of you can figure it out. Got shellfish, spot prawn, shrimp. Lots of people saying shrimp. That is a really great guess. That is our best guess at this point as well. We think it might be a baby tasty spot prawn. So hermit crab larva looks super similar to shrimp larva, but there are some slight differences. For example, the eye stalks on this larva are quite a bit wider and longer than a hermit crab. And the biggest difference is the tail, or the telson. So maybe we can take a look at that telson for a moment. So you can see how this telson is almost forked. A hermit crab larva would have more of a fan-like tail, and that's kind of how you can tell them apart. Spot prawn season is completely on in Banfield, and lots of folks are going out fishing. And so hopefully this little tiny spot prawn will grow up, and maybe Phil's going to find it in his prawn trap in a little while. Ooh, we got a jellyfish. Jellies can be hard to show up on the screen because they are quite transparent. We'll see if we can get a better look at this one. Wonderful. So folks, we've only got a few minutes left. If you've got any more questions, now's kind of the last chance that you've got to ask those. Jennifer wants to know if it's an arrowworm. It's not an arrowworm. They're a bit more transparent. That's a great guess. What are our favorite plankter? Kelly, do you want to start? What's your favorite plankter? Kelly likes jellyfish. Phil, what's your favorite plankter? Phil likes sea star larva. What's my favorite plankter? Oh, I have to think about that. I really like the porcelain crabs with their funny head spines. If you all have a chance, please Google porcelain crab larva. They are absolutely ridiculous. It's comical. I can actually try to draw one for you real quick on the board. See if you've got a marker. Don't have a marker. Phil, can you give me the camera for a moment? So I'm going to show you what a little porcelain crab looks like. This is what a porcelain crab larva looks like. It's a very highly technical drawing. You've got little legs coming here, a little face, and this gigantic spine that goes all the way across their bodies. They're quite impressive. So Phil, there was a YouTube comment. What was that?
Yeah, someone is wondering who is the most accurately portrayed SpongeBob character?
Who is the most accurately portrayed SpongeBob character? That is such a tough question because they're all a little bit silly in SpongeBob. Maybe the squirrel. Gotta go with the squirrel. That scuba diving squirrel, I think, is really the most realistic thing that we've got in that TV show. So thank you all so much for joining us. This has been super fun. I really enjoyed reading all your comments and answering all of your questions. Again, if you like what you're seeing, please consider making a donation. Phil's going to put some information on how to do that in the video link. And thank you everyone for helping out. So thank you to Phil for switching back and forth between all those slides. Thank you so much to Kelly for figuring out all of these little plankton shots and taking all these amazing videos for us. Kelly's been working so hard. And finally, of course, thank you so much to all of you at home for watching. We couldn't do it without you. So keep an eye on our social media pages, and we'll be putting out more information on when our next live show is. And hopefully, I'll see you again then. So from all of us here at Banfield Marine Science Center, goodbye and take care, folks.